Name is Dion Davis. This is the Dion Davis show called Positivity is the Way to Go. Today, my guest, Pete has recently started hosting a podcast that is centered around sports. Welcome, my guest today, Rami Lavi.
Hey, thank you for having me, Dion.
It's nice to have you on, man. So what made you want to go into sports and everything and talk about sports?
Such a great question. Honestly, um, originally I grew up a big sports fan. My father's a big sports fan. He got me into sports when I was a little kid. Him and I together would watch a lot of sporting events. We'd go to a lot of sporting events, play a lot of sports, and I was always very into it. And but in the back of my head, I never knew it was something that I could do necessarily as a career. I was always trying to do something else, trying to grow myself, whether it was school or trying a different job. And then, I was talking to a lot of people about sports, always talking about sports. I always thought I had my own opinions, and my opinions were different maybe than everyone else's. And I decided, you know what? I'm going to follow my passions. It's so easy in this era in 2021 to just start a podcast or start a blog. There's so many different ways to get your name out there and to get what you're trying to provide out there, your information. So this is what I'm passionate about, and this is what I should follow. I should follow my passions. And so I decided I'm going to start a sports podcast. So, I'm not doing it for the fame or for any recognition or any of that, but one day you just got to start if that's what you want to do. And so I just started, and we'll see where it takes me. Right now, I'm just doing it for the love of it, and I enjoy every second of it.
Have you had anybody reach out to you, like sports athletes, or anybody reach out to you to come on?
So I haven't had people reach out to me necessarily, no. But what I do have is I've collaborated with a couple other podcasts. I'm joining your show now, which I greatly appreciate. And I've reached out to plenty of athletes, plenty of people in the industry, people who work for blog websites, people who work the actual beat of, professional teams, some athletes, some amateur athletes, some professional athletes who haven't quite made it to that level yet. And I've been lucky enough to have some of these guys on. A lot of them are really helpful. They'll talk to you no matter what, even if you're not there yet, they'll come on, they'll try and improve you. And it's great. It's a great community.
Yeah, because maybe I can get some on. I was thinking, because I've been trying to get celebrities on my show as well. And it's hard. I've been trying to get like actors on my show and everything, comedians. And it's hard with the representation and everything that they have and everything. Like you got to talk to their people. You can't just talk to them directly, and that's what I don't like about the guests and everything that you got to get on your show and everything.
Yeah, it's definitely tough at the beginning to find the people that are willing or want to come on, but the ones that do want to come on are really great. And what you can do is once you have one person on, they can connect you with someone potentially. And it kind of snowballs from there. I had a guest on. He was a great guy. He played amateur hockey. He has his own podcast now. He connected me with someone who hosts an ESPN show in Houston. And, just like that, we were connected, and I had him on the show. So stuff like that happens, and you just got to keep working. If you build a network, if you build a portfolio and people can see, oh, you have this podcast, you've been around, you're not a nobody, you're eventually, people are going to want to come on your show.
Yeah, that's why I had you. That's why I wanted you on the show today because I like sports too. I watch Sports Center. I'm from Chicago. I root for the Bears, the Cubs. Chicago sports team is not that good right now. Like the Bears need a quarterback and they not playing so good. And then the Cubs, they getting rid of everybody. And the other baseball team, they the best team I think, even though I'm a Cubs fan and everything. And then the Bulls, they won yesterday. They suck though. They always choking in the fourth quarter.
What I would say, first of all, I'm a Trubisky truther. He hasn't thrown a pick six in his career yet, which is crazy. He actually, I think it's like 150 something, or he has the record for the most straight attempts to begin a career without a pick six. So that's pretty crazy. I think, yeah, he's shown that he's limited, but also when you're bouncing in and out of the lineup constantly and there's all these things being thrown at you on social media, I'm not sure what a type of chance they gave him. But I agree, it might look like it's definitely time to move on. maybe a trade for Sam Darnold, my quarterback from the Jets, because I'm a Jet fan. Jets are no good either. But
Oh yeah, yeah.
if you guys trade for Sam Darnold, that's something that could definitely work for the Bears. I could see that working for them. As far as the Bulls, I think they're going to have to trade Zach LaVine. I think Zach LaVine is a decent player, but I don't think he's the type of player you can build a franchise around. Zach LaVine, again, he's putting up insane numbers this year, but I think it's a kind of situation where he's putting up great stats on a bad team. If he was on a better team, his stats would not be as great, but he takes advantage of the fact that he's on a bad team and he can do whatever he wants. I don't think his play style is conducive to winning, and it's evident in the fact that they're not winning. And as far as the White Sox, yeah, they're going to be good this year. The AL is weak, especially the AL Central is weak, and they made a lot of moves to get better this offseason. So I think they're not going to be as good as the Yankees. So I don't know if they're going to come out of the AL, but will the Yankees see them in the American League Championship Series? Maybe that could happen. And as far as the Cubs are still good. Yeah, they traded away a couple of guys. They're kind of trying to rebuild, and we're seeing this a lot in baseball, and I don't love it. Baseball is moving to a place where teams don't feel pressure to compete every season, to compete year in and year out. And after a season like last year where they lost so much money, teams are kind of salary dumping and throwing away good, really talented players just because they don't want to pay them. And there are other teams like the San Diego Padres and the LA Dodgers who are just going to pay people endless amounts of money, like we saw. I think the Padres have an $800 million infield between the four guys, Hosmer, uh, second, and now they just got Tatis and Machado. It's a $800 million infield is insane. And then you have a team like the Rays, who their whole salary, their whole payroll is about $40 million. So it's definitely an interesting dynamic. And I don't think it's great for the sport. I think, a salary cap wouldn't necessarily help because you'd still have these teams who are not willing to spend. The problem isn't the teams that are willing to spend. The problem is the teams that aren't willing to spend. And now the Cubs, they won for the first time in 100 years. They won, 5 years ago, but it's already 5 years. They feel like they're content now and they can try and get, they're going to try and trade Chris Bryant. They already got rid of Anthony Rizzo. They traded Yu Darvish. So yeah, they're getting younger and they're building for the future, and they still have a very solid team now and they can definitely compete. But at the same time, you'd like to see teams go for it every single year.
Yeah, who do you think the Bulls should pick up if like the free agents to make their team better? Because they got a good coach over there, and the East is weak.
You're talking about the Cubs?
No, the Bulls. Who do you think the Bulls should pick up? Like a
Oh,
big time free agent, a guy they could trade for, to improve the team.
honestly, I think they need to get an identity. With the Bulls, it's an interesting situation. They have a lot of talented pieces, and this has been the case for the last few years, whether it was Markkinen or some of those guys. They just haven't really put it together since that 2011 season when Derrick Rose won the MVP and they were the one seed in the East. Since then, he got hurt. They lost to Philly, and that was it, right? That was the last time the Bulls were at that level. I know they made the playoffs a couple times since, but they haven't been back to that level. Even with the Jimmy Butler days, they weren't back there. So what I would say is you kind of need to rebuild. Now, it's the opposite of what I said about baseball. I think you need to find the players. It could be very quick in basketball. If you get the right guys, I think they have the right role pieces. If they get 1 to 2 stars, maybe it's via the draft. I think if they trade Zach LaVine for a couple first round picks, which is very possible, they get a couple first round picks back, then within 2 years, you have 3 or 4 first round picks. We could be looking at a really good team because first round picks come right into the league. They're ready to contribute. So I say build through the draft. There's not going to be that guy who's just going to want to come to you in free agency and just turn your franchise around unless you have, you know, the structure in place. Everyone talked about how I know this. I'm a Knick fan. Everyone talked about how, oh, everyone wants to play at the Garden. Everyone wants to play on Broadway. Everyone wants to go to the Knicks. But then again, look what happened. Nobody went to them. But the Brooklyn Nets, they were in a terrible situation. They traded away their whole future, all their future assets to the Boston Celtics. And then what happened? They built from within. They had a good coach. They played harder. They played better than what they should have been playing. And then people started looking like, hey, let's go to the Nets. And that's what Kyrie and KD did. And now James Harden forced a trade to the Nets. And now they're incredible. So do I care about the Nets? Nobody cares about the Nets. But at the same time, you have the Knicks are still sitting there like hey, when's our free agent going to come? And now for the first time, the Knicks aren't looking at it that way. They're like, okay, we're going to build with what we have. Tom Thibodeau is going to coach these players to play better than what people think they are, to play above their, I guess, pay grade. And now it's working out. And now we finally see that. So I think teams make themselves a destination, not by where they're situated, not by who the coach is, not by who runs the team, but by how they build a culture. And the culture has to be a winning and a caring culture.
Well, I think it was a mistake when the Bulls let him go and everything, because they was winning when he was with the Bulls. Now he's a coach of your team. I think when they let him go, that's when they failed. That's when they went downhill.
Yeah, here's the thing with Tom Thibodeau. A lot of people say after time and after a bunch of time, especially if you're not winning, meaning when they were winning, it was great, but then Rose got hurt, a couple other guys got hurt. His message can get dry because he's constantly on you. He's constantly nagging the players. He always wants them to be great. He's always screaming at them. Greg Popovich does the same thing. Excuse me, but what Greg Popovich does is he always wins. So Greg Popovich is always winning. If you're always winning, yeah, 100%, go ahead, do that. Yeah, you know, be hard on your guys. Go hard at them, always scream at them. All that stuff that Tom Thibodeau does. He pushes his guys to the level. He plays them tons of minutes. He plays them really hard in practice. But when you're not winning and guys are getting hurt, then they kind of tune him out more than they would even tune out a regular coach because they're just so sick of having to kill themselves for him. So luckily for the Knicks, they weren't necessarily winning, but he came in here, he changed the culture, and these guys are guys who want to work hard. They want to buy in. You know, the combination that the Knicks have right now is weird. It's a bunch of young guys who are hungry. Young guys are always hungry. They want to prove themselves in the league. Emmanuel Quickly, RJ Barrett, Kevin Knox, Frank Ntilikina. And then you have a bunch of veterans like Julius Randle, who maybe this is his last chance to prove that he can be a star in this league, and he's proving it. He's an all-star. And maybe if the Knicks keep it up for the full season, he'd probably get a couple MVP votes. So that's a good combination of players that the Knicks have on this team.
Okay, what do you think about the baseball teams there? Because the Mets got better, and the Yankees they always there.
As far as the team, so I'm a Yankee fan, and the way I see it with the Yankees, it's always disappointing for me because you expect them to win the World Series every year. I know people think we're crazy that we have that expectation, but the franchise has given us that expectation. They've been in it every year. They've been good enough to win a World Series every year, and that's why we expect it every year. So, as far as the Yankees, I would say this. I would say the expectation is for them to at least make the World Series. I know the Dodgers are nuts. I know the Padres are nuts. There are some really good teams, but I still expect them to at least come out of the American League. Like since 2017, 18, 19, 2020, all those years, people expected, well, the expectations weren't high in 2017, but after they almost made it to the World Series, everyone expected them to go back to the World Series and haven't even made it yet. So, yeah, the expectation is high. The expectation is to make it to the World Series, and anything but that is a disappointment. And at an even further point, to say that the season would be fun, I don't think it's fun unless the Yankees are dominating everyone, unless they're really play to their level. We're sick of the last few years, guys getting hurt, guys not showing up, guys not playing to their level. We want Garrett Cole to be, the Garrett Cole we paid for. We want Tyone and Kluber to be the guys that we hope they could be. We want Severino to come back strong. We want a full season from Giancarlo Stanton and Aaron Judge. You want Gleyber Torres to be healthy. You want Gary Sanchez to actually play the way he played when he first came up in 2016. All those things, Yankee fans want that to happen. And even though the Yankees have been good, they've overcome a lot of adversity. We haven't seen what their full potential could be in the last few years, and I'm ready to see it. As far as the Mets, listen, everyone knew it wasn't going to flip on a dime. Met fans thought that the second Steve Cohen buys the team, he's the richest owner in baseball. He's going to buy everyone. They were already penciling in, okay, number 1 starter, Jacob deGrom, number 2 starter, Syndergaard, number 3 starter, Trevor Bauer. They're like, okay, we got Bauer. And then they were like, okay, our catcher is going to be JT Realmuto. Our center fielder is going to be George Springer. And then we're also going to sign DJ LeMahieu away from the Yankees, trade for Nolan Arenado. And basically they thought they would they would also trade for Francisco Lindor. So they thought their infield was going to be DJ LeMahieu, Francisco Lindor, Nolan Arenado with, I guess, the polar bear at first, Pete Alonso. Behind the plate would be JT Realmuto. Their outfield would be Conforto. and Springer and whoever else you put in left field. And that's what they thought their team would be. But that's not realistic. That's not how, I get it. This guy didn't suffer through the pandemic because he didn't own a baseball team that was just losing him money. So he's definitely in a better position. He is the richest owner probably in the four major sports. But at the same time, he's not going to come in and just go on a spending spree. And then he concerns a lot of Met fans. He did get Francisco Lindor. He did get Carlos Carrasco, both big trades. They are definitely going to help the Mets. The Mets are definitely going to be better than they were last year. But at the same time, he concerned a couple of Mets fans when he said the other day that, we have to concern ourselves with re-signing Conforto and re-signing Lindor. We don't know. There has to be enough money for everyone, enough money for everyone. I understand saying that if you signed a bunch of people, you didn't sign anyone yet. And he's already talking about enough money for everyone. That's not what the Met fan had hoped for. And at the same time, another thing that's going on is that division is stacked. People don't realize this. The Braves, they got to get some respect. They won the division a bunch of years in a row now. They're really good. Yeah, their pitching maybe isn't to the level that people think, but Ronald Acuna, Freddie Freeman are some of the best players in baseball. They still have really good pitching. They don't have that big name starter, but their pitching is good. You look at the Marlins, they shocked a lot of people last year with Derek Jeter over there as the owner. They made a playoff appearance. Yeah, it was a 60-game season. They got hot, but they faced probably more adversity than anyone. Remember, they took the 2-3 weeks off with COVID situation that they had down there, and yet they still pulled it off. They were hot to end the year. You look at the Nationals. I think the Nationals improved more than any other team in the quietest way this offseason. Yeah, the Padres had a great offseason. We all know that. But the Nationals quietly just improved positions that they needed to improve on. They picked up John Lester, a veteran left-hander. They picked up Kyle Schwarber from the Cubs, a great left-handed power bat. They also picked up Josh Bell from the Pirates, another power bat, left-handed power bat who can hit. They picked up another reliever. They improved places that they needed to improve. This is still a very similar roster as the 2019 World Series champion Nationals. So I think they're really good also. And don't forget the Phillies. The Phillies made a bunch of moves last year. Before last year, everyone was talking about them the way people are talking about the White Sox this year. They were that team that put in a bunch of moves, and everyone's like, oh, look out for the Phillies. They have Real Muto. They have Bryce Harper. They have a lot of pieces. They have Aaron Nola. They have some pitching, Zach Eflin. We'll see what can happen with them. I think the NL East is a really tough division, and I don't think anyone's going to run away with it, and definitely not the Mets.
Yeah. What do you think about the NBA? Who do you think is Brooklyn and LA and nobody else, or and who do you think is the dark horse team?
As far as the dark horse team, there's a couple, but yeah, I think it's Brooklyn and LA. We've seen how good Brooklyn is. The last, I guess, 15 games or so. At the beginning, it was a slow start, but James Harden has transformed. I don't think he's transformed. People are saying, oh, he's transformed. I think he's getting a little bit more attention than he got in Houston, but this is his play style. He's that good. He's been that good for years in Houston, and now he's proving himself to the whole world. Again, he did it last night with a triple-double basically in the first half. So he is that good. He drops points. The other day, he had 30 points, 14 rebounds, 15 assists in 44 minutes and didn't have a single turnover. The only difference between him and the Houston version of himself now is he's not touching the ball for most of the possession and every possession anymore. So maybe his usage rating went down a little bit, which the only thing that's helping him with is he's not turning it over as much because he's not forcing any plays as much, but he's still one of the premier passers in the league. He's obviously one of the best scorers in the league. The way he could get to the rim, get to the free throw line, and obviously create his own shot with that step back jumper. It's unbelievable. The guy's, I think, one of the best players in the league. Then you throw in KD, who's for sure probably the second to best player in the league after LeBron James. And Kyrie Irving, when he buys in, he's really good. And don't forget, the role players that they were able to hold on to in that trade, Landry Shamet and Joe Harris, those guys are really good scorers. Those guys are scorers and guys who can play defense. They can help this team because the three big guys that I just talked about, KD, Kyrie, and Harden, they don't play much defense. So they're going to need someone to play defense down the stretch of games. I really like those three guys, or those two guys, Harris and Shamet and a couple other guys to play defense for them. As far as on the other side, the Lakers, yeah, I think it's the Lakers or bust. I mean, if Anthony Davis doesn't come back, maybe it's a little bit more open. Maybe Portland can go on a run. I've always wanted Portland to go on a run, but I think Denver took a step back. They lost a couple of role players. I think The Clippers just haven't proven to me that they're as good. Yeah, they were good in the regular season. Remember, before the COVID shutdown, they were going to be one of the better teams in the league. I mean, they
They don't
were one
got
of the,
no bench now. They don't got no bench no more. They just got starters and that's it. They don't got no depth.
yeah. So that's tough for the Clippers. I don't see them being a team that can necessarily compete in a playoff series. Yeah, and they're a good regular season team. And in the East, Philadelphia has been incredible so far. But I don't know if they could beat the Nets in a series. I don't think so. So oftentimes in the NBA, this is how it is. But early in the season, it looks like it's going to be the Nets and the Lakers.
And then in baseball, it's gonna be New York and LA, right? You think? Or no dark horse?
So baseball's different. Baseball, there's going to be a team that there's going to be a team that emerges, early on, June, July. We're going to be like, oh, this team's actually way better than we thought it's going to be. And then there's also going to be that team that, you know, that just in the playoffs turns it on. That late in the season, we're not expecting them to go on a run in the playoffs, but somehow they go on a run. So yes, listen, I think the best teams in baseball right now are the Dodgers, the San Diego Padres, and the New York Yankees. I think those three teams are great. So the Dodgers and the Padres are going to be battling it out all season in the NL West. We'll see what happens there. But in the American League and specifically in the East, I don't think there's a big challenger for the Yankees this year. And I really hope this is the year that they could just kind of walk through the playoffs and make it to the World Series. But then again, in the past, it looked like they had that easy path also, and other teams came and stopped them, like the Rays.
Yeah, but I don't trust San Diego though because they got a lot of people. They got a lot of money into like three players and everything, you know. And I don't think they could beat LA because they don't got depth and everything. They just got good starters, but if somebody get injured or something, they ain't gonna be able to hold up, you know.
I agree with you. The what the Dodgers have done is incredible. What they do is the last 5 years, really, they've been doing this. They didn't win the World Series, so they got another piece. They didn't win the World Series, so they got another piece. Now they just won the World Series, and they got maybe the biggest piece. They got a guy in Trevor Bauer who I don't know if he's a great player. I definitely don't like his antics off the field. But at the same time, you can't deny he was the Cy Young last year in the National League, albeit in only 11 starts. But still, he was the Cy Young winner. That's a big piece. That was the prized free agent that people were going after. And the team that just won the World Series is the team that got him. And they didn't lose anyone either. So this team is back and they're better. So yeah, I think the Dodgers should win the NL and it should be pretty easy for them.
Yeah, and what do you think about football? What do you think about Kansas City? Because they just lost and everything. I think Kansas City is overrated in my mind. I think they are going to be on the decline because they got a quarterback that got $40 million wrapped up in him every year. So they're going to get rid of some good players and everything. What do you think about football?
Well, it's an interesting situation that you bring up because I don't know if you remember the second year of Russell Wilson's career, he went to the Super Bowl and won it. And then the third year of his career, he lost the Super Bowl to Tom Brady. Russell Wilson hasn't been back to the Super Bowl since. A lot of people at that time would say that the Seahawks, while they have a great coach, they have a great team. They just made it to back-to-back Super Bowls. They should have won the Super Bowl. They lost it on a crazy interception at the goal line at the end of the game. They'll be back, right? And they haven't been back. So people probably view the Kansas City Chiefs the same way. They have a great coach. They have a great quarterback. They just made it to back-to-back Super Bowls, right? But here's what's different about the Chiefs. I think Andy Reid, not only is he a great coach, he's proven in the league. I think he's more proven than Pete Carroll was at the time. Also, Patrick Mahomes, I don't think we've ever seen a quarterback as talented as him. Even in the Super Bowl loss, he was trying to do things on his own, and he was so good. Now, Todd Bowles put together an incredible game plan against him. They got tons of pressure on him, but a lot of that was due to the fact that the Chiefs' offensive line was totally not there. 4 of their 5 starters were not in the game, and I think if they can get some of those starters back next year, I don't think the decline will be as quickly as you think. I think this is the type of team that they'll constantly try and evolve the team and try and keep changing, moving pieces here and there, moving money around to make sure that even with that huge contract in Patrick Mahomes, they can keep the rest of the team competitive enough that Mahomes will carry them. And Mahomes is that good. As long as they keep him protected, they can get the offensive line in place. As long as they do that, I think this team will be good for the duration of that Mahomes contract.
But do you think they got any competition over there, though? You think anybody could beat them? Or it's
In the
just
AFC,
them? Yeah.
listen, there's always teams in the AFC that could beat them. The Bills came on last year. They looked incredible. obviously the Ravens, we haven't seen them perform to the level that they are capable of in the playoffs. You forget the Chargers were really good a couple of years ago, and then they totally fell off. A part of that was because Philip Rivers was really bad that year after they went into the playoffs. But now they have Justin Herbert. I could see them coming on real soon also. And they're in their own division. Justin Herbert is going to be the next great quarterback in this league. You could see it in his rookie season, how good he is. He's so big. He's so strong. He's so talented. He's going to be the next Josh Allen and better. He already was better than Josh Allen, I think, this year. So Justin Herbert, I think he could challenge anyone in that league. You look at Tennessee. Tennessee's still there. The Cleveland Browns, I don't think they're going away. I'm not a huge Baker Mayfield fan, but they're not going away anytime soon. So there are teams in this league that can compete with them. Yes.
And then what about Tampa Bay? Do you think they gonna win again next year? And who do you think they competition are?
Well, Tampa Bay is a really good team. Obviously, they just won the Super Bowl. People doubted them all year, but at the end of the day, you have Tom Brady. You have the greatest player ever. So I'm not going to say that they don't get it. Listen, they have a chance to win the Super Bowl again. As long as you have Tom Brady, and people realize they put that young team around him and they were really good. They were better than maybe a lot of people would have thought. So it wasn't just Tom Brady. There were a lot of good players. They built the offensive line. The defensive front was obviously great. That defensive secondary, young defensive secondary, at times mistake prone, but they played really well. The receiving core is nuts. You think about it, Mike Evans and Antonio Brown and Chris Godwin and Gronk, all these guys, Cameron Brate. That's a really good receiving core, I would say. So the talent and skill on this team, if they can retain a lot of these guys, is obviously through the roof. It's out of this world. I think Aaron Rodgers is still going to be on the revenge tour. I don't think he's happy that he lost to Tom Brady in that game. I don't think he's happy with the way that first half ended, with the way he had a chance to win that game at the end of the game. You know, he had a bunch of chances. He got the ball back 3 times, down 3 or down 5, and still didn't score. So I think Rodgers, if it's him, he wants to come back strong. I don't know if he has another MVP season in him. He's a little bit older now, but I know he wants to come back strong. I think it really depends who the Saints get at quarterback. Listen, if the Saints can make a trade, make a splash here, Russell Wilson, Deshaun Watson, maybe a couple of these quarterbacks who are available, I think they have been the best team. But Drew, the last 2 years in the NFL, I think Drew Brees is just limited at this point in his career. So if they could get a legitimate starting quarterback in there, then I think that team could be really good. So there's a bunch of other teams that can be really good. Don't forget the Rams. The LA Rams just traded for Matthew Stafford. I think the LA Rams are going to be really good. They have the best player in the NFL in Aaron Donald. I said it. He's the best player in the NFL. He's not only the best defender, he's the best player in the NFL. And that defense is insane. They have Jalen Ramsey, who's probably a top 3 or 4 defender. So you have 2 of the top 4 defenders in the league. And then you also have Matthew Stafford, I think has been an underrated quarterback in his career because he's been in such a bad situation. You put him on that team with Sean McVay, I think the Rams have a real chance of winning the Super Bowl next year.
So who are your two favorites then? You think it's going to be the two same teams, or you think it's going to be different teams?
Definitely come back to me after the draft on this. Draft and free agency, a lot could change. But I like the Rams. I do like the Rams in the NFC and the AFC. I can't bet against the Chiefs, honestly. You know, maybe the Bills, but it's hard to bet against the Chiefs, especially if you think that everyone on that team is going to be coming back next year. So let's say Rams Chiefs.
But do you think if he didn't have all those offensive weapons and he had to be like the guy at Tampa Bay, you think he'd still be good if he didn't have all those pieces around him?
If you're talking about Patrick Mahomes, well, I would say Tampa Bay had more weapons around him than Patrick Mahomes did. Look at Tampa Bay. They had Mike Evans. They had Chris Godwin. They had all those guys. You saw what Tom Brady was his last season in New England with no weapons, and he wasn't nearly as good, right? People were saying that Tom Brady was falling off because his weapons were not there. Now, for Patrick Mahomes, yeah, Travis Kelce is the greatest receiving tight end maybe we've ever seen outside of Gronk. And you also have Tyreek Hill, but Tyreek Hill before Mahomes got there was just a speedster, just a guy who stretches the field. They turned him into a real receiver. I do think Patrick Mahomes would be good in almost any situation. Obviously, we saw what his, I guess, Achilles heel is, the one weakness he has. If you can pressure him with only 4 guys, with 3 or 4, without sending more than that, and you can set everyone else back in coverage, that is what will hurt Patrick Mahomes. very few teams can pressure him with only 3 or 4 guys, especially if the Kansas City offensive line is healthy, which it wasn't in the Super Bowl.
Yeah. So so what do you think about the former the guy at Tampa Bay? What do you think about his former team? They say he's the best coach in football. What do you think about them? Because they got a lot of money to spend and they can sign people.
Um, I think the Patriots will always be there. I think Bill Belichick is diabolical. I think the last few years he's kind of had his hands tied by the owners, by Robert Kraft, saying, "Hey, you got to keep Brady around. You got to keep Brady around." There were rumors he wanted to keep, Jimmy Garoppolo. There were rumors he wanted to draft Baker Mayfield. All these rumors about who he wanted to groom as the next Patriots quarterback, and the ownership basically didn't really let him. So now he's going to have a chance. He could either trade for Deshaun Watson, he could trade up in the draft, he could trade for Russell Wilson. He has a lot of cap space, like you said. He could sign a bunch of players. I think some players may want to go there, some players may not want to go there. It's freezing there. And if you remember, Tom Brady and Gronk, they came back this year and they were like, oh, we don't have to play in that rigid system anymore. We don't have to always be hated on. Remember what I talked about with Tom Thibodeau and the Knicks? It's the same thing. Coach Belichick is going to be on you. He's going to make sure you are good. And listen, some guys can handle that. Some guys want that. Some guys can't handle that. If they can get the type of roster, a bunch of young, hungry guys like I talked about, and a bunch of guys who are maybe veterans trying to prove themselves still, then yeah, they could put it together. They'll be great because Belichick is a great coach. But at the same time, they got to hit it in the draft. This is a team that's been terrible in the draft the last few years. If you think about the players they've taken specifically on the offensive side of the ball, they need to start hitting in the draft. And if they can't do that, they won't be good.
What out of all the three sports, what is your favorite sport between football, basketball, and baseball?
That's a good question. That's a tough question, honestly. My first sport that I fell in love with was definitely baseball. I played in a baseball league from the time I was 4 years old. I went to baseball games every summer, tons of baseball games with my father, with my grandfather, sometimes with my siblings, with friends, even alone. So baseball was definitely the first sport for me. I also love hockey, so don't leave that out. There's 4 sports.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
I'm a big hockey fan, big New York Rangers fan. I don't know if you see that there,
Oh yeah,
Rangers
yeah.
logo. Um, yeah, but football was second for me. That was what came second. And I got into basketball a little bit later in my life. I was in high school already. So not late, but a little bit later than, than the other sports. But I think the way the city, like New York, rallies around the Knicks, I think the Knicks are the most popular sports team in New York. Even with all the other sports teams, I think the Knicks are by far the most popular. You see it. They're not even great this year. They're just exceeding expectations. And you see how the fans are rallying around them. So I see my dad do that. He's a Knicks fan. His favorite sport is basketball. So I think when the Knicks are good, or all things being equal, I should say, if all 4 of my teams are really good, I think I'd take the Knicks being good over anyone else.
Yeah, they like the Dallas of the NFL.
Who is?
Your basketball team, right?
How are they like Dallas of the NFL? Listen, these we
Okay.
never said they'd be good. Dallas fans every year
Okay.
are coming out here that Dallas is going to win the Super Bowl. We know how terrible we are, but we're ride or dies. We're going to be with them no matter what. If they're terrible, we're still going to be there. Knicks fans rooting for them. And case in point here, these are not bandwagon fans. These are fans who have been suffering for years with the Knicks. They've been suffering, and now they're coming out there dancing in the streets. Yeah, is it a little premature to dance in the streets for an 18 and 17 team? Yeah, a little bit, but still, this team is good enough, and it's exceeding our expectations. They're putting together quality performances every night, and they're putting out their effort. They're playing defense. That's more than any other NBA team does, is play defense and put out effort every single night. So yeah, we could be celebrating, but we don't talk a big game when they're bad. We know when they're bad. They're usually bad.
Yeah, I feel you, man. We live in the two largest states in the United States, New York and Chicago.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. What about the other New York football team?
The Giants?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Honestly, I don't have much to say about them. I think they're going to give Daniel Jones another year. We have to see if Saquon Barkley can come back from his injury. it's always interesting. I thought they should have drafted a quarterback in that draft when they drafted Saquon Barkley. Thing is, when you draft the running back and it's supposed to be a great running back, you basically have a 4 or 5 year window that he's going to be that good. I don't think giving a great running back a second contract is ever worth it. I think what you should be doing is you draft the quarterback. When you have the quarterback in place, if you have a really good team, then you could take the star running back. He'll be good for 3, 4 years. That'll be your Super Bowl window. And then if he walks or you have to trade him or whatever, that's fine. Franchise tag him a couple times. Running backs just, especially after their first big injury like Saquon Barkley, they don't come back as strong. The alternative is you could say this about maybe because he was hurt and he didn't play, it's not so much wear and tear on his legs and on his body. And now that bought him an extra year, and Saquon could actually come back after a rest, after being rested. And by the time they build the team around him, maybe they decide who they want at quarterback. Daniel Jones has shown flashes, but I don't know if he's the answer. Maybe by the time they put the team in place to be really good, Saquon will still have his legs and be really good for them. Only time will tell.
And I got one more question. What do you think about tanking in sports? Why do you think teams lose so many games and everything? What's the point of you? Like sports is about winning.
So, like I said, in baseball, it's stupid because there is no tanking in baseball. That's why it makes zero sense. Remember, I said teams are not trying to go for it every year. Now, in a team like basketball, a sport like basketball, I should say, yeah, tanking kind of makes sense because you're not guaranteed the pick. So that's stupid. It's just a lottery. So you can get anywhere in the top 14, even if you were the worst team in the league. Trust me, I've seen that with the Knicks where they were the worst, second to worst, third to worst team in the league, and they're getting picks 8 and 9 in the draft. But they were the worst team in the league. Everyone thought they'd get Zion, and they ended up at 3 getting RJ Barrett. I love RJ Barrett, but he's not Zion Williamson. Or John Morant for that matter. So they missed out on both those guys. So tanking definitely doesn't help you. But at the same time, if you're not going to be good, yeah, you're going to try and make sure your draft pick is as good as it could be. And what a lot of teams do is they try and lose games to, get higher draft picks. They try and trade away players to get future draft picks, to get assets for the future. In a way, it doesn't really make sense because look what happens. No team's going to want to go to you if you're trying to lose. The Nets didn't have any draft picks, so they had nothing to lose for, right? And think about it. They traded away all their draft picks, and they were so terrible, had no draft picks. And so they were like, you know what? We have no choice. We're just going to try and win. That's all we can do. And guess what happened? They built a culture. They built a winning culture. They built a culture of a team that's going to play hard no matter what. And that's what brought the stars. I think that's what the Knicks are doing now. So if you ask me, I understand why teams tank, but at the same time, I think you need to build a winning culture. And the way to do that is by trying to win. In the NFL, listen, I was just screwed by it this year. The Jets won one game and were knocked out of the first overall pick. Now, eventually they won a second game also, but they won one game and they lost Trevor Lawrence because of it. So I was rooting for my team to lose. Yes, it's a tough position to be in, but I was rooting for them to lose because I wanted a guy who can be a franchise altering player. So in the NFL, you don't see tanking as much. It's only 16 games. I think if anyone tanked this year, it was probably Jacksonville. Jacksonville started off with a big win against Indianapolis, and then they stunk the rest of the year. They benched their starting quarterback for multiple periods of time, multiple stints. So it definitely looked like they were tanking for Trevor Lawrence. But baseball doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense in baseball. The draft, you're so many years away from those players even being relevant for your team. Why tank? What's the point? But yeah, trading away current players for future assets is always going to be a thing in sports because listen, there are windows. You have to keep them open. No team is like the Yankees where they've made the playoffs for 30 years in a row. That doesn't happen. You see, even with the Patriots, who won so many Super Bowls, they won 6 Super Bowls. They made the playoffs 20 years in a row. They were great for a 20-year stretch. Eventually, you have to pay for it. They just had a completely depleted roster this year, and that's what's going to happen eventually. So I think teams should try and stay relevant year in and year out. But at the same time, I understand why you have to sometimes sacrifice the now for the future.
All right, I think that'll be all. Thank you for coming on today, Rami. Thank you for coming on, man. You up any time? Maybe I come on your show. Maybe who knows?
All right. Thank you so much, Dion. Yeah, let's continue to be in touch.
All right.
Awesome.
See you.
See ya.